dot I'm getting one request. Okay, here I'm getting which information we will take. Let's take one customer data request. Let's take one customer class. We will send the customer data in the request. We'll send the customer data in the request. Private integer customer ID, name, email. Private string ID, private string name, private string email. That's it. Now I am taking this as data. What is the purpose of taking data? Setters getters will be generated for these variables. We no need to write the setters getters for these variables. I'm using Lombok. If anybody facing the issue with the Lombok, you generate the setters getters manually for your variables. Okay, how to do that? Right click, source, generate getters and setters. Manually you can generate the setters getters for the variables if you don't know Lombok. If you know the Lombok, then you can use Lombok annotation. If you know the Lombok, you can use the Lombok annotation. Okay, good. Our class is ready. Now this class I want to use for XML data also. Okay, we can use XML root element. I want to support for XML data also. If you want to support for only JSON data, you can remove this annotation. If you want to support for XML data also, we need to make it as a binding class. XML root element. Ready. Now go for REST controller, new class. I'm taking REST. Here I'm using a class with a name called customer REST controller. I'm using a class with a name called customer REST controller. How to represent this class as a REST controller? By using REST controller annotation. I am using one annotation with a name called REST controller. Got my point? I'm using one annotation with a name called customer REST controller. I'm using REST controller annotation. Okay, I want to write one method, public response entity. I want to send string as a response. I want to send string as a response. Here I'm taking add customer. Add customer. Okay, string message is equal to some null value. String message is equal to some null value. Now new response entity of body comma status. Body I am going to keep as a message. Status I am going to keep as http status dot created. Not okay guys. Created means 201. Record is inserted. Created means 201 is the status code. Whenever client application send a post request to the server will send the status code as a 201. 201 means what? Record created. When client will send a post request to insert the record, so you need to tell to the client that the record is inserted. 201 is the status code. 201 is the status code. You got my point, na? 201 is the status code. Okay, good. Now here we will go for @post mapping. @post mapping. I will give customer. Perfect. Any confusion in this program as of now? One thing is new that I am returning. Earlier we are returning okay. Okay means what? 200 success. But here not success. It's creating a record. So post request methods will return the status code as 201. That means the record is created successfully at the server. Post request purpose is to create the new record in the server. So whenever you are developing a post request method, you need to return the 201 as the status code if that method is responsible to insert a record at the server. If that method is responsible to insert a record at the server, then we are going to return 201 as the status code. Okay. Guys, it is clear. Now, in order to create the customer, we need to take the customer data from the client. How client will send the customer data? Guys, observe carefully, next 5 minutes, very important. Customer will send, client application will send data in the object format, or client application will send the data in the JSON format or XML format. Does this method expect the object? Does the client will send the data in the object format? Client will send the data in the object format, or client will send the data in the XML or JSON format? Come on, guys. Client will send the data in the JSON format or XML format. Now, can I directly take data in the JSON format? Can I directly take the data in the JSON format? Yes, you can take it. But what is the problem? I'm expecting customer JSON. Then what is the problem? What is the problem if I take JSON directly as a parameter? Method is tightly coupled with only JSON. What about XML customers? So tell me, do you need to read the XML data directly? You need to read the JSON data directly, or we need to take the object as a parameter? Simple, sir. If I am taking the JSON data, my method will support only for JSON. If I take XML data, my method will support for only XML. You want to hard code only for one format, or you want your method to be interoperable? You want to hard code the data, or you want your method to be interoperable? Method to be interoperable. Then what we will do? I will take one object as a parameter. I will take one object as a parameter. What my method is expecting now? Object. Now tell me, client application will send the object. Client application will send the object. Come on, guys. Client will send the object, or client will not send the object? Client will send the JSON data or XML data. Where they will send the data? Request body. I need to read the data from the request body. Here what happens is, whenever client send the XML data or JSON data, Spring Boot will convert that data into object format. Okay. Now here we are going to specify one attribute called consumes attribute. What is the purpose of consumes? Consumes will tell them in which format this method can take the input. Consumes. Consumes means it will tell that in which formats this method can take the input. My method can take the input in the application/XML or application/JSON. Produces means providing. Consumes means taking. Okay. This method can consume. That means this method can take the data in the XML format or in the JSON format. When client application sends the data in the XML format or JSON format, that data will be converted into this object by the Spring Boot. This object will be converted into this object by the Spring Boot. Are you guys able to understand this method? This method is binded to post request. I am using post mapping. Value, nothing but URL pattern. Consumes, that means I am telling this method can accept XML data or JSON data. This method can take the input data in the form of XML or JSON. Where that input data will come? Input data will come in the request body. The data which is coming in the request body will be converted into customer object. Will be converted into customer object. Guys, are you able to follow me? System.out.println. Let us print in the SOP whether that object is coming, the data is coming and converting into object or not. In future, in the Monday session, what we will do? We will store that data into database. In the Monday session, we will store the data into database. Are you able to follow me? Are you able to follow me? What is consumes? What is request body? Consumes is representing in which format this method can take the input. If the data comes in the XML, JAXB will convert that XML data into object, will pass to this method as a parameter. If JSON data comes in the as input, JSON API will convert the JSON data into object, will pass to this method as a parameter. Request body represents the data is coming in the request body. Here, query parameter means what? Request param. Okay, path parameter means what? Path variable. Path parameter means what? Path variable. Request body means what? @request body annotation. The data will come in the request body. Samjha? If the client is sending the data in the query parameter, we can read that query parameter data by using request param annotation. If a client is sending the data in the path parameter, we can read the data.
Recording in progress.
Fine. Now our program is ready, guys. Our program is ready. Now I have a question. Here, this application, IRCTC application sending the data in the form of JSON. How HDFC application will understand that IRCTC is sending the data in the JSON format? How resource application will understand in which format client application sending the data? Do you need to tell to the server or not? In which format you are sending? Accept for getting the response, man. Accept means in which format you are expecting the response. Here we need to tell in which format you are sending the input. That's where content type header will come. There is one more header will come which is called content type. What is the purpose of content type? Content type is used to inform the server in which format client is sending input to the REST API. Samjha? Accept is nothing but in which format we are expecting. Content type means in which format we are sending the input. Accept for response type. Content type is for input type. Got it? I will show you that example. Okay. Our application is ready now. Go to properties file. Guys, a lot of depth is there in the RESTful services. Have you ever thought of these many details will be available when one application is communicating with another? You are simply placing a order in the Swiggy Zomato. Have you ever thought that this much code is executing in the background? You are doing Google Pay, Phone Pay. From the Google Pay, you are sending the amount to your friend who is having HDFC bank account. How Google Pay sending money? Your Google Pay number is associated with the SBI account. Your friend Google Pay number associated with the HDFC account. How SBI account number, SBI bank sending the data to HDFC bank through REST APIs only. B2B communication. GPay is a B2B communication. PhonePe is a B2B communication. Got it? Paytm is a B2B communication. From now onwards, your thought process has to change. Whenever you are using the application, your thought process has to change. When you click one button, Google Pay, send amount, your data, whatever the information you are sending, whatever the information you are entering in the Google Pay will be converted into one JSON format. That JSON will go to the server. Server side, that JSON data will be processed. Again, they will send the response back to the client in the JSON or XML. So many things are happening internally when you go for distributed applications. One application is communicating with another application. In today's world, almost all the applications are developing with B2B communication to improve their business. Okay? Good. Now, let us start our application, guys. Run application started. Application started. Go to here. What request we need to send, man? Method is binded to what request? It is binded to post request. HTTP post. What is the URL pattern? Customer. 9090/customer. Okay, we need to send the customer data. We need to send what data, guys? Customer data. Where we will send the customer data? How they are expecting the customer data? In the form of JSON. What are the fields available? ID, name, email. I will send the customer data in the JSON format. How to represent the JSON? How to represent the JSON? Here I will specify application/JSON. Okay, ID is going to be 101. Name I will keep it as Raju. Email I will keep it as raju@gmail.com. Now tell me, this data is in the JSON format or not? This data is in the JSON format. Now tell me, every client will send only JSON, huh? Some clients may send XML also, right? Some clients may send XML also, na? Some client applications will send JSON data. Some client applications will send XML data. Okay, now the problem is how our REST API will understand this client is sending JSON or this client is sending XML. That's where one header comes into picture, which is called content type. One header comes into picture which is called content type. What is the purpose of the content type, guys? Content type is used to inform the server in which format we are sending the data in the request body. Samjha? What is the purpose of content type? What is the purpose of content type header? It is used to tell to server in which format we are sending the data in the request body to the server. Okay, now look at the console, clear the console, send the request. 201 created. Okay, success. Customer data is available in the object format or not? As a programmer, am I writing the logic to convert the input JSON into object, or Spring Boot is doing that conversion? As a programmer, I am converting the data into object, but from the postman, what data I am sending in the request? From the postman, what data I am sending in the request? JSON data. But in the REST API, what data we are getting? How the data is getting? Object. That means some magic is happening or not? Data is converted to object or not? Who is converted that? Who is converted? Boot. Using Jackson API. How Spring Boot understand that it has to convert by using Jackson? That's where content type comes into picture. What is the purpose of content type? What is the purpose of content type? What is the purpose of content type? To tell to server in which format we are sending the request data. Tell to server what data we are sending. Okay. It is used to tell to server what data we are sending. Now do you understand the difference between accept header and content type header? Do you understand the difference between accept header and content type header? Accept is used to tell what we want. Content type is used to tell what we are sending. Got my point? Okay. Now here we will write logic to store record in DB. Now I will say message is equal to customer record created.
Recording in progress.
request data. This is the request data that we are sending. Request data. Request data. How we are sending that request data? Here I will give you screenshot also of my Postman. How I am sending that request data. This is my request data. Here if you observe, I'm setting JSON. That is the content type. There is a header called content type header. This is the body, this is the data, and this is a post request. Okay, when we are sending the data in the request